Werewolves. What is it? Well, they are people who turn into wolves at night, usually under a full moon, which is like really romantic. When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's a werewolf. Thank you. So werewolf legends have existed in some shape or form for over 1,000 years, which means werewolves have been terrorizing children's dreams since before paper and pens even existed. I know. Paper? How far back does paper go? We gotta do a dark history on paper because I never even thought about it until right this second. Take note. Thank you. Did you write that down? Great. So werewolves, they first show up in ancient literature between 2100 and 1200 BC in a story called The Epic of Gilgamesh. By the 400s BC, yeah, shout out to 400s, there were like these tales about this Russian tribe called the Nuri. And like word on the street was that these men in this tribe, they could actually turn themselves, or they could actually turn into wolves a few days out of the year. Yes, only a few days they could be like, I want to be a wolf today. And they would. It also kind of sounds like Animorphs. Remember that book as a kid with those covers where it was like a normal person and then they would turn into like an animal? It was so random. That's what it reminds me of. Great. So then, as Christianity starts spreading around Europe, belief in werewolves starts being labeled as sinful and pagan. Like the church didn't like that. This idea that someone other than God could physically transform themselves from one thing into another, you know? Like no one should do that, only God should do that. In the 1500s, there is a huge rise in witchcraft. At this time, people are super paranoid. Everybody's making wild accusations towards one another. Like neighbors would be accusing other neighbors of cutting off their penis and like doing magic spells with them. Yeah, with the penis. I don't know. Also, there was a lot of people like burning at the stake. Times were tough. Times were very tough. They were bored. And basically, if the church was declaring that witches were real, then they have to admit that werewolves were real too. So they did. So just like with witches, people associated werewolves with the devil. The church declared that only God could physically transform something, so it was believed that anyone suspected of being a werewolf had made some sort of deal with the devil. I know. Shit. Yep. Paul? One of the first werewolf trials happened in France, and it became known as the Poligny trial. It all started on a dark night in 1501 in Poligny, France. There had been a terrible storm that day, and a farmer named Pierre Birgo was looking for his sheep, which had all gotten lost during a storm. In the woods, according to Pierre, this is when he was approached by 3 men on horseback, and they were wearing all black cloaks. If someone shows up wearing a cloak, look the other way and run, because no one has anything good to do or say with the black cloak. So these guys, they ask him about his sheep. They're like, where are your sheep? And one of the men promised Pierre that 3 things would happen. 1, that he would find all of his lost sheep. And 2, that he would be protected and never have any more troubles. And 3, that he would be given money. In exchange, Pierre would have to pledge to, quote, serve the man's master and meet with the man again in 5 days. So Pierre was like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? He wants his sheep back. His sheep are missing, and that's how he makes money, right? I mean, it does sound a little vague, but whatever, I'm in. And then boof. Immediately after he says yes, Pierre finds all of his lost sheep. Wow, I know. So 5 days later, Pierre goes to meet with this mysterious man in the black cloak. And he learns that this guy, his name is Moiset, and that he was a servant of the devil. I know. Wow. Small world, huh? So Pierre is like, he's like, oh shit, I'm in a pickle. But a deal is a deal, you know, it's too late. So he swears allegiance to the devil. He had to. I don't know. And also, on top of that, he renounces Christianity forever. Peace out. I'm into the devil now. So according to Pierre, like shit sucks because he kissed the mysterious man's left hand, which he described as black and ice cold as that of a corpse. I don't know why he's kissing it, but he did. I think that's how you seal the deal. Whatever. But Pierre goes on to serve the devil for 2 years. And just as the man promised, Pierre's flock of sheep was protected. He had good fortune. But deep down, Pierre's like a really good Christian man. So he's like, shit, like, I need to go back to church. Like, I kind of miss that shit. So he goes back to church. He's like, I'm gonna, yay, church. And then he's approached by like another mysterious man. His name was Michel Verdun. Don't know who he is, but he persuaded Pierre to return to the devil, telling Pierre that the devil would give him even more money only if he came with him into the woods. I know, it sounds like one of those things they teach you in school. Like if someone offers you money, but you have to follow them into the woods, maybe don't go. You know, like I don't think anything good is gonna happen there, but we're not Pierre. And Pierre likes money, I guess. So Pierre follows Michel into the woods. They come across this ceremony in the woods, right? So then all of a sudden this Michel guy, he turns into a werewolf. And Pierre, for good reason, loses his absolute mind because what the fuck is going on, you know? So later on, Pierre goes to trial and he shares his experience during this trial. Quote, in a wood, we met with many others whom I did not recognize. We danced, and each had in his or her hand a green taper with a blue flame. Still, under the delusion that I should obtain money, Michel persuaded me to dance. And in order to do this, after I had stripped myself, he smeared me with a salve, and I believed myself then to be transformed into a wolf. I was at first somewhat horrified at my 4 wolf's feet and the fur with which I was covered all at once. But I found that I could now travel with the speed of the wind. End quote. Sounds like a party, man. I'm in. What kind of drugs? Acid? Sounds like it. Well, according to Pierre, he spent 2 hours as a werewolf before Michel rubbed him down with that magical ointment, and then boof, he became a human again. And then once Pierre experienced this transformation, I mean, I guess he just could not stop. He really liked it. He and Michel would go out constantly as werewolves and terrorize the community. Fun. One day, a man from the church is passing through this area, and out of nowhere, he's attacked by a wolf. He actually fights the wolf off and apparently injures the wolf so he can get away. Well, this man decides to kind of figure out where this wolf went and follows a little blood trail to see if it leads him to the injured wolf. And it leads him straight to Michel's cabin in the woods. This guy knocks on the door and guess what he finds? Michel getting first aid treatment from his wife. Well, this guy who got attacked, I guess he was like a church official. And he's like, okay, like this is obviously evidence. This man is a wolf, like not just any old wolf, but a werewolf. So he goes back and he notifies authorities, which in the 1500s, I don't know who's in charge, but someone was in charge who's like, I want to tell this guy. So Michel is arrested, he's tortured, and ultimately admits to being a werewolf. And then on top of that, he names Pierre as his accomplice. So then in 1521, Michel and Pierre are officially accused of cannibalism and witchcraft. They're brought before the church's Inquisitor General. Well, it takes a full day for Pierre to make a full confession because he's like, I don't want to tell you people shit. But then finally, he tells the judge the truth, that he was, or is, a werewolf. So Pierre admits to crimes the court really could not even imagine, and he tells them about a time when he and Michel had transformed. I guess one night they had like been a wolf or whatever, and they saw this woman who was just minding her own business, gathering peas, and then they like attacked her and tore her to pieces. And then on top of that, like some man saw and he came and like tried to rescue her. They ended up killing him too. Together, they killed and ate a 4-year-old girl and left only one arm behind. So they're killing people. He told the Inquisitor that Michel thought human flesh was delicious and that one night they strangled a girl and drank her blood. So Pierre even spoke about a time when they almost got caught. I guess they had, captured a 7-year-old boy, but the boy screamed so loud that they had to quickly get that ointment on their skin and become human again and get dressed in time to get away without anyone noticing. The Inquisitor asked Pierre to transform into a werewolf in front of them to prove that it was true. But Pierre said like he had to be naked for his transformation to happen. Hot. Michel told the court everything Pierre had said was true. Ultimately, they admitted to diabolism, aka making a deal with the devil, murder, and eating human flesh. And that's how Michel and Pierre became the first men executed for being a werewolf. And this wasn't just like a one-off story, because in Germany, there were hundreds and hundreds of cases where people were accused of being werewolves. And it wasn't like it was a fair and balanced court system. I mean, just like with the witch trials, if you were accused of being a werewolf, that was it. You were done, right? Same with the witches. Like, how do you not prove you're not? How do you not? Whatever. The court had a plan of their own. Basically, it was like torture someone until they admit to being a witch or a werewolf. And then once they confess, then you kill them for being a witch or a werewolf. And that's how you got them. Most of the time, the accusations were started by people looking for revenge for petty reasons. Like if you didn't like your neighbor Brad because he kept you up until 2 a.m. playing the harmonica for some strange reason and you can't sleep, then boof. Guess what? You got all the power, baby, because you can walk your little ass over to the church the next morning and you tell them that you want to report a case of lycanthropy, whatever the hell that is. Well, lycan is the Roman name for wolf, so like this became the official term for the crime of being a werewolf. And this was a surprisingly easy claim to make back then. All you had to say is that, I don't know, you saw Brad transform into a werewolf last night. Like, oh my God, it was nuts, you guys. You should have saw it. He turned into a werewolf and like he fucking like rare. And I'm like, it was crazy. You guys missed out. You should have saw it. And this would essentially be a death sentence for Brad, because ever since the Polini trial of Pierre and Michel, werewolves were everyone's like worst nightmare. The most famous case of someone accused of lycanthropy happened in 1589 in a small German town near Cologne. I know, I love Cologne. It smells so good. This case involved a man named Peter Stump. I mean, there's not much on record about his life, but what we do know is that he was a farmer, he was a husband, a father, and really no one paid much attention to poor Peter because he's just normal, right? He did his work, he kept his head down, life goes on, you die. Now, even though this is like the most famous case of lycanthropy, no court records or transcripts have survived. So everything we know about Peter and his trial comes from pamphlets and handbills, or like news articles that came out during this time. But the story goes that after a series of murders in the town of Bedburg in Cologne, the villagers start to patrol the town in packs. I mean, they want to find out who is responsible and hopefully catch them in the act. And finally, it happens. They see a rabid wolf on the hunt and the villagers chase it. They were sure this was the werewolf responsible. Now, there are a couple different versions in terms of like what happened next. Some sources say that the wolf transformed back into a human by removing a magic belt. And the wolf that the villagers were chasing became Peter Stump. Another account, which you can find in something called the Nuremberg Broadsheet, says that a farmer was attacked by a wolf one night, but was able to get away by chopping off the left paw of the wolf with a knife. Later, the farmer sees that Peter Stump is missing his left hand. Coincidence? I think not. Apparently, it was enough to go to the church on suspicion that Peter and the wolf are one and the same. What? Poor Peter, he is caught that night and arrested. And then on top of that, tortured. They attach him to the rack, which if you don't know what the rack is, you need to watch our medieval torture devices. Bitch, the rack is horrific. It's a horrific torture device. So they put him on this thing, and then Peter confesses eventually to being guilty and then goes to trial. But of course he's going to confess. He's being tortured. I would confess too. I'll say whatever you want me to say if you're fucking ripping me in half. Right? I know. So in his trial, Peter says that he made a pact with the devil to become, a werewolf, as one does. And it seems like this was the 1500s version of pleading insanity. Like, Your Honor, I swear I can't be responsible for my actions. I was a werewolf at the time. Duh. In some versions of this trial, Peter pled guilty to transforming into a wolf via that magical belt situation. I guess it was a gift from the devil himself. The devil gifted him a belt, a Gucci belt, and it could keep Peter in his wolf form for up to 7 hours at a time. All right, sure. Does the wolf still wear the belt? Or does it disappear once he turns to? Because that'd be kind of cute to see a wolf with like a little belt. Like, you know? Is he wearing pants? No, because he's naked. The only way to become a werewolf was to be naked, except for the belt. I got questions. Anyways. Oh, wait, I'm the devil. I made that up. He's lying. Peter goes on to confess to the court that he was responsible for 16 human murders and the deaths of many animals of nearby farmers. Oh, shit, Peter, you did a lot. Now, of those 16 people, I guess like 13 of them are kids. Whoops. But he didn't just like kill them, because why stop there? He also committed cannibalism with their corpses. And one of his victims was Peter's own son. Okay, yeah, this guy's a little fucked up. Now, Peter, he openly confessed to eating his son's brain. But, correction everyone, he did so as a werewolf. So, technically, Peter didn't do it. It was a werewolf. So, he didn't do it. Peter also confessed to raping and murdering 2 pregnant women. He told the Inquisition that once the women were dead, he ripped open their stomachs and allegedly ate their children. All right, Peter. So Peter even admitted to raping his daughter and having an affair with his sister. So I guess it's safe to say that maybe, he should just be locked up forever and burned at the stake. Actually, do it. Apparently, he also had a 25-year sexual relationship with a succubus, which is like a type of demonic creature that takes the shape of a beautiful woman. So he had a lot going on. He was a really busy man. Understandably, the town decided Peter was indeed a piece of shit, even if he was a werewolf. And they decided he deserved the worst kind of death. So they put him on one of these like turning torture wheel things, and it stretches his body. So Peter was completely stretched to the point where like his bones broke. And then they skinned Peter, like they got all of his flesh off. And then finally they decapitated him in front of a huge crowd and burned his body. You want to talk about extra? These people were extra. They did the most. But he did a lot of bad things, so whatever. And then afterwards, they put his head on a stake in the center of town just to remind everyone of what happened and what could happen to them if they want to misbehave. It's just a lot, right? Yeah. Can you imagine where you live now? Like before you go to Target, you would see a bunch of heads on a stake. Would you still go to Target? Yeah. But I would be like, oh my God. Anyways, someone once wrote about Peter Stump saying, quote, "Of all other that ever lived, none was comparable unto this hellhound," end quote. Some historians believe that Mr. Stump over here was actually a scapegoat for a lot of like the Christians versus Protestants fighting that was happening at the time. And like, oh, that actually might be true. But there are others that believe he was just a bona fide serial killer and people are trying to make excuses for this man when he does not deserve it. I guess we'll never know. Then why are all of his like the paperwork and stuff missing? Maybe someone got rid of that on purpose. I don't know, just a thought. Okay. Oh my God, that scared me. God, I thought someone was watching me.